Namaste, everybody. We will start a continuation of what we were doing. Today, the suggestion came from Dr. Professor Garg that we should go into some practical understanding of things. We have been discussing a lot of theory. Theory is not enough. So let me begin. So the interesting thing is, let me start with this, because it may be indirectly connected to what we are. In Kashmir, the Kashmiri Pandits were at one time worshippers of Devi, Shakti. It's called the left-handed path, which is called Kaula Marga. It's called Vama Marga, it's also called Kaula Marga. So those of the Pandits who worship the Shakti using Kaula Marga shortened their names and put the title Kaul. Anyway, that's not irrelevant, but Shakti is important for us. So in this, so till now we were doing mostly the Upanishads and the theory and so on. I believe, and it's a fact, not only because I believe, it's a fact, that one needs to have some kind of practical method to free the mind from its limitations and conditionings. We can say all that when everything is calm, there is the supreme reality, and so on and so forth. How to calm the mind, which is always doing a circus, first. Secondly, the ordinary brain as we have it, the ordinary mind, at the moment I am saying brain for mind also. I am using the same term because you can't see the mind anywhere except here. So, the ordinary mind, which means the ordinary brain, which is involved in activities day to day as well as knowledge, gathering of knowledge and so on and so forth, is not equipped in its present condition to touch something beyond the ordinary three-dimensional world. In three dimensions, it will do everything. It will even go to theoretical physics and go after the theory of relativity and so on. Psychology, it may go, sometimes jump across psychology and go to parapsychology. From physics, there are minds which can speculate on metaphysics. But if you need to have your own experience and understanding, you need to uncondition your mind and develop certain devices in our system which have, due to years of neglect, been deactivated. Let's consider this as a computer for the time being. Some parts of the computer which are necessary are there, working. With that you can even go to the moon. But we are saying, the yogis say, that there are some parts of this computer which have programs which have not been activated, which are dead at the moment. They are not deleted, they are somewhere there, but they have to be activated. Unless and until these are activated, we can talk a lot with theory, but we cannot touch that which we are trying to find. Rather, we cannot penetrate through the known world and go to another dimension which is beyond. Okay. Sometimes during deep emotions, when you have a high, it's possible that some part of the brain is active which is not normally active and which may reach that which is beyond. This is natural. Sometimes it's like you're listening to great music. Well, the listening to the music and everything takes place with your mind, with your brain apparatus and your hearing apparatus. But when it goes deep and you're completely lost in it, sometimes there is some center of the brain which is not normally active, which takes over. And in fact, neurologists are now seriously studying these matters. It's not like before. In fact, there is a new subject, since you are all scientists and technologists, there's a new subject has just appeared on the horizon which says that the brain, neurological theory, of course, experiments are still going on, that the brain is wired for a so-called spiritual experience already, whether we know it or not. Some may not be active, some may be active, but they are wired. So, this is called neuro-theology. There are parts, you go and refer somewhere on Google or somewhere, you can find a lot of experiments are going on. So, the thing is, we need to, when we say scientific inquiry, we need to step out of our normal thought about scientific inquiry. That there may be things which we are still not ready to approach. At the moment, at present, at least we should start with a doubt that the present way of investigating may not be okay for something that is beyond. At least that much of doubt has to be there. When quantum physics itself today has a beautiful understanding of what we call the law of probability, the law of uncertainty. Professor David Bohm, who is a Nobel Prize winner in physics, has given many talks and discussions on this. David Bohm, B-O-H-M, on the subject of the principle of uncertainty. In quantum itself, there is the principle of uncertainty because nobody is sure now what actually is. One time everybody was damn sure of what is. Newtonian physics. Every action is an equal and opposite reaction and so on and so forth. But today, when you go to quantum and go deep, I'm talking about physics, we'll come to something. Go deep inside. What happens is, nobody knows the mysterious ways in which the little quarks or the building blocks of the entire universe, how they behave. Nobody knows. You think it's a particle, but then you can't see, of course, you know that. You can't see a quantum entity. You cannot see it because no microscope in the world is powerful enough to see it. So we know it exists only through reactions, through fields, to reactors when they pass. Then you know how they behave. The funny thing is, you think it's a particle, and you're looking closely, it behaves like a wave. And you think, oh, this must be a wave. Then it behaves like a particle. Nobody knows actually whether it's a wave or a particle till today. This is the building block, the quantum entities. I call them entities because they seem to be intelligent in some way. These quantum little, people call it quarks. You can't say particle because it could be a wave. You can't say wave because it could be a particle. But whatever, the smallest unit of this whole universe today is in the principle of probability or in the principle of not being able to explain exact uncertainty. So this, I'm not saying scientists are wrong or right. I'm saying sometimes the physical scientists and technologists should somehow unclog the brain and make it less certain. And say that there may be other possibilities. That's all I'm saying. You don't have to deny what you have now, but there may be other possibilities. We may be looking at it from a different point of view. So this has to come. If this comes, then we begin to understand this easily, that there are today 20% of the brain is enough for all the activities we are doing today, including the highest intellectual activity. What happens to the rest? Are there other parts of the brain which have, because of misuse, what we have is the frontal lobe civilization. This lobe. There are temporal lobes, there are other lobes, there are many parts of the. Now, why I said this in the beginning, that while Upanishads and so on give us a lot of understanding on this in theory, simply by saying I am the Brahman, nobody becomes the Brahman. You can keep on saying I am the Brahman, I am the Brahman, I am the Brahman, and then somebody slaps you and you want to kick him. You are not Brahman anymore. So it's not by chanting that you become a Brahman. You need to find out, you need to open up certain facilities in you let's say the brain or mind, which can go beyond the 3 dimensions and look at something that is beyond. So first we have to get the mindset that yes, we have to look. Maybe we are wrong. Perhaps we have to look. I mean, we are wrong if we deny it. Now, this is not a newfangled theory of mind. From ancient times, the Bhagavad Gita, which is quite old, quite ancient. The Bhagavad Gita, at the end of each chapter, there is a repetition. First it says which chapter, that particular verse. But before that it says something. It says what is the Gita. At the end of each chapter, Vyasa says, Iti Srimad Bhagavad Gita. So this is the Bhagavad Gita. Upanishads, it is the wisdom of the Upanishad. In fact, the Gita is a kind of a filtered, concentrated, but simplified understanding of the great truths of the Upanishads, put in very simple dialogue form. So it says, Iti Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Upanishads, teaching the wisdom. What does the Upanishad teach? Brahma Vidyayam. It teaches you the knowledge of the Supreme Brahman. Next, Yoga Shastre. Now, why is Yoga Shastra mentioned here? Vyasa could have then gone on to the chapter and so on and said, because Yoga Shastra, or the technique by which the brain can be unlimited, can be moved from its conditioning, is very important if one needs to actually have Brahma Vidya, not simply by reading or theoretically understanding. So there are techniques. Now before I go into this, one more thing we need to discuss. Apart from the neurons of the brain and the different parts of the brain, right inside the brain, midbrain, little more up. Now look at this. This whole body is controlled by what? The brain. Breathing, eating, drinking, digesting. It's automatic movement, but the brain is coordinating everything. I don't eat and then say digest. Going on. I don't say excrete. Going on. When the urge comes, I have to sit. That's a different matter. So the brain is even when you're asleep, heartbeat is going on. Circulation. What is controlling it? The brain. At the moment, let's say the brain. Maybe something. Let's say the brain. Now, while this is happening as an automatic process through the autonomous nervous system, vagus nerve, this, that, and so on, the controlling point, therefore, is here. And the rest function according to the messages received and given by the neurons. So, this is interesting. There is a 15th chapter of the Gita. It's called Purushottama Yoga. It starts in a very, just the first 2 slokas, if you read, if you hear it, you will see that the person, whoever said it, is aiming at a completely upside down view of the universe, and how one needs to put our known theories upside down to understand things which are beyond. This particular verse says, Urdhva moolam athashakam ashvatham pravuravyayam chandamsi yasya paranani yastam vedasa vedavit. Which means, sorry, I like to quote in Sanskrit because it's very nice to hear. Better than saying this in English. Okay. Now the translation is, there is an Ashwatha tree. Well, Ashwatha is a peepal tree. It's a symbolical reference. There is an Ashwatha tree. You know why they use Ashwatha? Because The Ashwatha people tree is supposed to be holy. Many yogis, including the Buddha, have sat under the people tree and got illumined. So it's called a holy. In fact, the botanical name of the people tree is Ficus religiosa. At ficus, under which religious activity takes place, whatever it means. So, it describes an upside down tree. Urdhvamulam athashakam. The branches are all down below and the root is up. Normally we don't see such trees. The roots are down and the branches are up. There are many meanings to this, but I would say it also means the human system, the human body, whose roots are here, perhaps even beyond at the moment, let's say from here, and the branches are all down below, all activities. It says if you understand the leaves of this tree, then you understand the Vedas. Which means when you understand how this coordination of these leaves and branches takes place, then you find the source of that. In the human body, it is the brain. But it could be beyond that. Upside down. You see what I'm trying to say? Anything original comes when people have a doubt. And then they examine the theories which are all there and find out something new. So here an upside down process is required. Okay, having said this, next part. Not only are we to look at the parts of the brain, but inside the brain, there is a gland which is called the master gland, the pituitary gland. Below that is the pineal gland. And there are, down from neck down to the body in different parts, there are many glands which are called the ductless glands. They have no ducts, no tubes, but they are able to directly inject the hormone that they produce into the bloodstream. This decides our emotions in many ways. For instance, I get angry. There is a ductless gland, part of the system, which is called the adrenal gland. Adrenaline is pumped into the bloodstream. So I'm excited and angry, sometimes overactive. I feel good. I'm feeling good. The feeling goodness factor. I feel, now I'm okay. I'm contented. I'm blissful. There is a particular hormone, the wellness hormones. Dopamine is one of them. There are various others. When this goes into the bloodstream, you feel fine, you feel nice, you feel blissful, you feel positive. When it doesn't, you don't. This is automatic. We are saying that in the science of yoga, there are ways and means to at will activate these or deactivate some. If you can learn how to deactivate excess activity of the adrenaline, you can be less angry. A calm mind is essential to transcend the mind. If you can activate that part of the system which produces serotonin, which is also a goodness factor. So, in fact, some of the states of meditation are quite chemical. But then, when you have a headache, Karl Marx said religion is the opiate of the masses. Okay? Understand what he's trying to say. We are not talking about religion, we are talking about spiritual matter. Anyway, what did he mean? Look, it could be an opiate sometimes, religion. But when you have a terrible headache, throbbing headache, You need a medicine to calm your mind down, to remove the pain, to analgesic. You need opium sometimes to get the mind out of that throbbing pain and disturbed mind. Without freeing the mind and the brain from this disturbance, how are we going to even sanely look into higher things? So even if it is an opiate, it is worth it. That's what I'm trying to say. Except when some people start controlling you using religion. That is bad. That we are independent people, we should be able to get out of that. So, now, one of the ductless glands is something called the pineal gland. A lot of discussion is going on about the pineal gland now. The pineal gland is a very small, like a small little chili, red chili, green chili, very small, placed just below the pituitary in the midbrain, little behindward. What does it do? Pineal gland. Till some years ago, the pineal gland was considered to be a vestige organ, like the appendix. Appendix is, they say it's a waste organ. It's just there by accident. If it bursts, then you have to immediately do surgery and remove it in an emergency. It's called appendicitis. In the same way, they think, we don't know, sometimes somebody might come up with the actual function of the vermiform appendix. We don't know as of now. It's considered a vestige organ. Now, the pineal gland was considered some time ago as a vestige organ. Useless thing, nobody knows why it is there. In spite of the fact that it has what you call the optical cones and so on, which are also there in the retina of the eye. It has. If you look in the structure, the internal structure is very much like a retina. But it has no use, apparently, so therefore it was considered a vestige organ. Apparently. A few years ago, maybe 55 years ago, the scientists, the biologists, neurologists suddenly discovered. So the pineal gland, which was at one time considered a vestige organ, has been discovered some 55 years ago to be a very useful organ, very useful little gland. What does it do? It controls your sleep cycle. There is a word for the sleep cycle. Neurologists and psychiatrists and psychologists call it the circadian rhythm. I have not looked into why it's called the circadian rhythm, but it's called the circadian cycle. The pineal gland has a certain hormone in it, which when gets into the blood, you are in deep sleep, you fall into sleep. When you shut the windows and pull the curtains, make everything dark, and perhaps have some light music going, immediately it activates the pineal gland. And then there is the hormone that is injected into your system and you go to sleep nicely. This is what happens when you travel abroad, cross the time cycle, and go to other different timings and so on and come back. It's called jet lag. Can't sleep. What was day is now night, and what was night is now day. So we are in complete confusion. The pineal gland is in confusion actually. So it will take some time for it to become normal and start giving it at the right time. The circadian rhythm is disturbed. So what will the doctor say if you say, oh, I can't sleep, I'm going through jet lag? They would ask you to pop a pill which contains the hormone which is injected by the pineal gland, melatonin. When you eat a tablet of melatonin, you're back, your rhythm is back. I don't use melatonin, I'm just telling you, passing. I travel a lot now. This COVID, I'm sitting here for 7 months. But I am always on the move. One day I pack one bag, next day I throw it and take another bag. There is no time to repack. I travel abroad constantly, from Europe to the US and here and there. Now, so I must be suffering from lack of sleep, from jet lag, but I don't. People who have traveled with me know that. In a day, one day there will be a little bit of, next day I'm fine. So what happens? Maybe, perhaps you can speculate that I have mastered the art of controlling the pineal gland. Perhaps. Well, how is this possible? And don't look so, it's not mystifying, it's not a mysterious thing. It's a very simple thing. I just lie down on the bed. Look, I have no secrets. I lie down on the bed. I hang my head down for some time. So the blood circulation improves in the head. If you have high BP, you shouldn't do this. And then what happens? The pineal gland gets a good blood stream coming in. And then you do it for a couple of times and you're fine. Everything is set. What's happening? The mind state is controlled by very small outing. Now, this is interesting. If the pineal gland if melatonin induces deep sleep. Now, deep sleep, when we discussed the Upanishads, I think we started with the Mandukya Upanishad. In the Mandukya Upanishad, discussing the different states of consciousness of the human being, the Rishi says that there are common states of consciousness for all human beings. One is the waking state, in which we are now, the dream state. We all experience dreams, night dreams, day dreams. We are talking about the night dreams. Then deep sleep, Sushupti, deep sleep. But they also discuss a stage called Turiya. Turiya is the state, according to the Upanishads, where all the signs, SIGNS signs, I'm not saying symptoms because it is not a disease, all the signs of deep sleep are there, with one difference, that one is aware of what is going on then. You know, deep sleep is bliss. We all wake up and say, that was so blissful, that sleep. We all say that. And everybody needs sleep. When you sleep, your professor and students, you, all are asleep and you're all equal there. Anyway, no knowledge, nothing is left. You're all equal. The factory owner and the laborer who works there both go to sleep. Maybe the factory owner sleeps in a Dunlop pillow or soft mattress, and the factory worker may be sleeping in a small wooden bed on the floor. Maybe he sleeps better than us who sleep in soft beds. That's a different matter. Everybody is asleep. And when he's asleep, the whole world comes to an end. You may be anybody. And it is so important to rejuvenate and keep us healthy, that if you spend 2 sleepless nights, you're upset. The medicines that sell maximum in the market are sleep-inducing tablets, sedatives, and of course now antidepressants. If you don't sleep for 5 days continuously, you're definitely going to get into some kind of unbalanced state of mind. So sleep is so important. And in sleep, why? Because in sleep we don't even know who we are or where we are. You fall asleep in a bus, deep sleep. Suddenly wake up, you're wondering, where am I sitting? And it is so essential to the system because it rejuvenates you in the morning. You're, I've slept well. That was a blissful sleep. It's so blissful that my alarm may ring 5 times. I like to switch it off and sleep again. Common experience. Why? Because it's the only thing, as we know, in this world that gives us that complete rest, rejuvenation and bliss. We get up and say that was a blissful sleep. So, apparently there must have been some entity experiencing it, although we are not aware of it when we wake up. We are saying, yogis say, that in the Upanishads say, that the state called Turiya, it's not even a state, it's the whatever is called Turiya, which comes after deep sleep, is under most circumstances the same as deep sleep. Rejuvenating, going to the core, no business with anything or anybody, but there is pure awareness left. In deep sleep we don't have awareness. We wake up and remember it, but we don't have at that moment. At that moment, if it is remembered, then it becomes Turiya. Now, the pineal gland controls the circadian rhythm, which decides sleep and wakefulness and so on. Turiya is one step beyond deep sleep, something similar. So, can it be that there are parts of the mind, parts of the brain, which can be activated, which kind of give us a short glimpse of Turiya? And what is Turiya? In that state, you understand that there is only one spiritual entity in this whole world. It's not even an entity. You can't call it an entity. It has no shape, no form, nothing. The Upanishads call it Parabrahma, Supreme Brahman. But one factor, important, it's consciousness. Without that consciousness, we are just computers. There's nobody who's running the computer. Only the computer is there. Maybe when artificial intelligence comes, something will be running the computer also, but it is not conscious. The consciousness, first, basically, of me being aware that I exist itself is the essence of our being. So, to touch that, we need to get out of the limitations imposed upon us by our conditionings. And since these conditionings are in some way dictated also by the chemical reactions in the system and maybe other parts of the brain which we are not aware of. The other day, Professor Rahul Garg said, there's a man who has temporal lobe epilepsy and who believes he is God. No. Which means, it's not the thing we are looking for, but it simply means that a certain activity of the brain, here in this case a malfunction, may contribute to understanding or consciousness in a different way. And yoga is the science of deliberately, step by step, systematically going into breaking the conditionings of the mind. So, but then there are postures. Nowadays, yoga is famous, like in Hollywood, everybody is standing with their legs up and head down and things like that. God save you if you have high BP, but anyway. Because for good health and slimming and so on. Once I went to Wisconsin many years ago. It's a small group of people from the Wisconsin University doing practicing yoga. So I asked them, young American girls and boys, very spirited. So I asked them, so what kind of yoga are you practicing? I said, we are practicing Ashtanga yoga. I said, very nice. So have you any theoretical understanding of who is the founder of Ashtanga yoga? They said, V.K.S. Iyengar. I said, lovely. They said, V.K.S. Iyengar was the man who popularized this kind of yoga in the West. But he is not the founder of Ashtanga yoga. Patanjali, who lived several hundred years ago, the founder. I said, it's okay, you don't know, but that's fine. So what do you do? They said, we do all the postures. I said, okay, have you also learned how to untangle yourself from the knots that you tie yourself? They said, yes. I said, okay, good luck. Then they demonstrated some asanas and it went off. So what I'm trying to say is that in the text which is called the Yoga Sutras, in fact, I'm right now working on a book for Westland Publishing, which is Amazon. I have titled it Yoga Also for the Godless. Because I'm not saying for godless only, but also for the godless, simply because in our traditional darshanas, starting with Purva Mimamsa, Uttara Mimamsa, Vedanta, Sankhya, and so on, yoga is also one of the darshanas, principal modes of philosophy. Now this yoga darshana is very similar to Sankhya, which is very old. In fact, many Vedantins also use terms from Sankhya. How old Sankhya philosophy, Sankhya thought is because it was supposed to be founded by Kapila Muni. Kapila Muni is ancient. You will see references in the Bhagavad. You will see Krishna declaring himself as Kapila. That much respect is given to Kapila that when Krishna says his glories, among the mountains I am the Meru, and among the immovables I am the Himachala, and so on and so on. Among the rishis he says that Munis I am Kapila. It means Kapila is given so much respect. I'm saying for that. The founder of Sankhya is Kapila. It's an ancient philosophy. It is an atheistic philosophy. You'll be shocked. There is no mention of the concept of Ishvara in it. You know the concept of Ishvara? The creator God who is sitting there in the workshop, hitting you on the anvil, making people and throwing them down. There is no such concept of Ishvara at all. Or the angry God who beats you up, and so on. There is no Ishvara out there. There is only Purusha and Prakriti. It's not a monistic philosophy, it's a dualistic philosophy. There is Purusha and there is Prakriti. Every human being has an element of Purusha in them. But since we are completely controlled and bound by Prakriti, the whole of the practice is to free ourselves from the conditionings of Prakriti so that we sit in the pure aspect of Purusha. Anybody who has touched that pure aspect of Purusha is no different from the one universal Purusha that exists. All creation is part of the Prakriti's action. They're like chemical reactions. Sankhya, how many years ago? I don't know. Okay. Now yoga derives much of its understanding through Sankhya, from Sankhya, although it is a distinct darsana. The only difference you will find between much of the difference, few differences you find, one of them, between Sankhya and yoga darsana, is that in yoga darsana the word Ishvara is used here and there. But the concept of Ishvara in the yoga darsana is very similar to Sankhya, which means even a human being who has touched the Purusha, pure consciousness, is Ishvara, not some creator God or anything. And the original Purusha, of which all human beings are tiny emanations, conditioned, but that unconditioned original Purusha is also called Ishvara. But that Ishvara concept is not so important in yoga because they say, for instance, one sloka, Ishvara pranidhanatva. That means you can attain calmness of mind and reach higher sphere also by meditating on the concept of Ishvara. When you say also, that means there are many other ways also. Well, I love all these deities and all. I'm not talking about that. I'm saying we are looking at something in a very scientific way. So I like pujas in temples. I like the wonderful things that happen. I like to look at the supreme reality as something we can associate with it. All that is fine, but I'm telling you purely from the Sankhya and Yoga point of view, the concept of a creator Ishvara is not. Even the Jains have no such. Jains are atheists, believe me. But they are the most strictest people on the path. They torture the body to free itself. They believe that the soul is immortal, but it is conditioned by the body and the mind, and therefore it should be freed. The freeing of the soul from its conditioning is called nirvana, according to the Jains. But there is no, the souls are supposed to be eternal. There is no creator who has created human beings. So we have to think about all. There are many ways of looking at this. So, therefore, let's come to yoga, Yoga Darshana. Nowhere in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali has Patanjali called it Ashtanga Yoga, but he calls it Kriya Yoga. Swadhyaya Ishvara Pranidhanani Kriya Yoga. That's how he begins the chapter on practice called Sadhana Pada. Before that, there is a big discussion on the psychology of samadhi and consciousness and so on in the first chapter. The second chapter, Sadhana Pada, there he begins by saying that self-study, Swadhyaya, Ishvara Pranidhanani, and fixing your attention on the Ishvara concept. This is Kriya Yoga, which I am going to teach. This is what he says in the Yoga Sutras. The first part of the Yoga Sutras is called the Samadhi Pada. After a great deal of discussion, then you come to the practice. That's why I say before you start any practice, first go through the complete understanding of why you're doing it. Because suddenly you sit down and do all kinds of things and end up in a state which you cannot control and you don't know what is happening, and you go rushing back to the guru who taught you. He is very busy, he is with the politicians, he has no time to answer you. You see this? So one has to have a complete background before one starts actual practice, because it's a serious matter. You're going to undergo a lot of hormonal changes. You're trying to turn up those parts of the brain which have not been activated, and you should know what your map is. Google can't give you that map. Although now God is Google, G with a big capital. This map it cannot give us. This we have to understand and study for ourselves. Swadhyaya is necessary. So, let's come to the text called Yoga. There are many textbooks on how to practically train and activate other parts of our system so that we can transcend the conditioned mind and go beyond. There are many systems. Tantra is one. There are many forms of Tantra, Yoga Tantras and different ways. Then there is Bhakti Yoga, Jnana Yoga. There are different paths, but all are called yogas. So let's look at yoga as a word, and the greatest exponent of yoga who systematized it, he probably drew from various sources, was Patanjali. Patanjali himself is a mythical figure. He is depicted as half snake and half man. Anyway, so Patanjali says, now this is the beginning of the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. First he begins by saying, Atha Yoga Anushasanam. This is the beginning of the understanding of yoga. Now when I say yoga, please don't consider that word as only that in which people do asanas. Yoga. So that's what he's trying to explain. Atha Yoga Anushasanam. This is the beginning of the study of yoga. And the next, Yoga is Chitta Vritti Nirodha. Yoga definition is Chitta Vritti Nirodha. That means yoga is the stopping of the oscillations and disturbances and unsteadiness of the mind. Vritti is a word which can be translated as a disturbance, as an agitation, as a oscillation of the mind. Now, vritti, chitta. Chitta means, if anything is used in Sanskrit, the word chitta is used, it is the component, the essential component of it is conscious. It cannot be a padartha, non-conscious. So Patanjali is saying that our minds, which are conscious, chitta, have many vrittis, have many disturbances, have many agitations. Vritti Nirodha, how to stop or how to free the mind, the chitta, from all its disturbances and aberrations and oscillations and unsteadiness, and make it quiet and calm. When the mind is free of all vrittis, it is no longer the chitta, it is the purusha. Or it partakes of all the qualities of the purusha in the beginning, and then when after a while there is nothing left except the purusha, which is the pure essence of our being. This is how Patanjali begins the practice. Now in that, there are different ways to work it out. There are different practices involved in bringing about the chitta vritti nirodha. And for that, the step-by-step practices are, Patanjali gives 8 numbers. That's why it's called Ashtanga Yoga by many people. One is Yama, Niyama. 2, Yama, Niyama. Asana. Asana need not necessarily be all the asanas that we do. Basically, asana, according to Patanjali, in Patanjali Yoga Sutras, you will not see any descriptions of the multiple asanas which are there in the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, for instance. He only says Sthira Sukham Asanam, only one place, which means that posture in which you can sit for a length of time, Sthira Sukha, in Sukha, that is your asana. So it could be chair asana for the Westerner. He need not unnecessarily twist his legs into Padmasana, although Padmasana has its own physiological and psychological advantage. We'll get into that in the next one, next lesson, next interaction. So it starts with Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, and Samadhi. This is Samayama. Niyama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhi, Iva Samayama. These are the things described as the 8 angas of the practice of yoga. So where does it begin? Yama, Niyama. Now when it comes to Yama, Niyama, which means there are certain rules and regulations to be followed before one proceeds into this meditative act. If you follow most of the rules much of the time, your mind already becomes sensitive to meditation, even before you start anything else. So what are the Yama Niyamas? Yama Niyamas are rules and regulations to be followed by a practitioner. Some of them have been taken by religion and used. Don't harm others, don't hurt, don't cause injury to others. In fact, the first Yama or rule, Yama, and regulations, Niyama, is Ahimsa. So you will wonder why is unconditioning the brain, why has Ahimsa to do? Gandhiji was crazy, but why Ahimsa and so on? Ahimsa is the recognition that all living beings are equal in your eyes, and that hurting a living being, including a human being, is not conducive to the natural stage of evolution. As much as you can. We are human beings, we have our limitations, but to attempt, it's not even physical hurt. Ahimsa also means the attitude of mind of not causing harm to others. Why would somebody start with such a terrible, such a difficult thing? It's not so easy, believe me. You may not slap somebody, but in your mind you might think if this idiot gets a slap, it will be nice. We already done Himsa. Right? Look, somebody in anger takes a stick and hits somebody on the head in anger. A villager working in the field, he gets angry, there's a fight. In sudden anger, adrenaline rush, he takes the plow and hits it on somebody. That fellow dies. He's a murderer. He's put inside, arrested, for life, sentenced to death. There are hundreds and thousands of people who kill people simply by sitting in their office rooms and ordering somebody to be killed. They are not arrested for murder. Are they? Now therefore, it's so difficult for us to think, bless them that curse you. Because the usual law is an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Patanjali says change a bit. It's not easy, huh? Bless them that curse you. But believe me, even one person who curses you, if you in your mind you think good of him, the mind is already settled down in peace. Instead of lying down in the bed and said, that fellow cursed me, that fellow cursed me, tomorrow the first thing I have to do is hit him. So, Ahimsa is a state of mind more than activity. In fact, to slap somebody is better than thinking badly about him all the time. And if one can lead the life of not thinking of injuring others or causing harm to others, that itself makes the mind peaceful. Starting with. So some rules, and among the Niyamas, there's another one which is non-acceptance of gifts. Now this is also very difficult in the Christmas, birthdays, everybody brings flowers, gifts. If you don't accept them, they get very upset. But why is there a rule that one shouldn't? The simple reason is, we didn't say not shouldn't, but for a yogi it is better not to accept gifts. Why? See, tomorrow, suppose I am a guru, let's say. I'm not a... many people think I am, but I'm... If you read my short stories collection, it will be nice, interesting. There's one thing called The Last Day of the Guru, one of the stories. Penguin has just brought it out. Suppose I am a guru and you come to me one day. I'm a human being, right? With all my shortcomings and weaknesses, although I might put on a robe and all that. You come and you bring me a packet and give it to me. I don't know what the packet is. Okay, put it. You go back, I open it. There are 2 lakhs in cash, maybe 1,90,000, because otherwise you have to show accounts. You have cash. Now, I ask, who is this man? Oh, Mr. Venugopal or somebody. I'm not talking about any known person. And then tomorrow, when Mr. Venugopal comes, he gets special treatment. He might be bringing another packet. Who knows? It's not that whether he brings the packet or not, my expectancy comes. When my expectancy happens, I'm no longer a self-sufficient individual. There are people who are so poor. Go and give them some money. They say, keep it with you, sir. I am very happy. They're not even yogis. So, non-acceptance of gifts has been said for this only. Not that you should make people upset. On birthday they bring you a flower and I don't take gift. No, that's not the way. Then you are hurting them. Then you are not doing your Ahimsa. That is not Ahimsa. Now it's 1 hour, so we'll have some question answers for half an hour. In next session I'm going to go into the details one by one, including asanas, some asanas, pranayama, pratyahara, then dharana, dhyana, meditation and so on, as ways and means by which systematically one can open up the conditionings which are there on the mind. Thank you. Today's session is over, but we have half an hour for question answers.
Shrem, I had one observation, if you allow me. See, when you
Please.
talked about yoga and chitta vritti nirodha, I got the sense in which you said it. So I'm not trying to correct you, but for the audience, and since in IIT I would kind of connect on a language basis a little differently. The word stop can sometimes lead to people suppressing the expression of human feelings. And I just wanted to bring in an element which I want you to ratify if it is correct. Is that nirodha is in a way something like cleansing or kind of getting rid of bad habits so that the stillness or the viveka can kind of be more regularly present, like more consistently present.
So, Professor, what you should understand is that when you say vritti, it automatically means aberrations, not good things.
Right.
Vritti. All good feelings of love, affection, these should be cultivated rather than what, if you want to use an English word, nirodhified.
No, I'm sorry. No. Let me then rephrase what I said. So what I'm saying is that let's say I have some kind of an expression of greed that I want to take something from someone else, not a desirable thing. So a good example of a vritti.
Yes.
Now, if I just stop it in the sense of okay, fine, I got this awareness of it, and I just want to throw it away, can kind of create another vritti. Whereas a tactful, a very, I'm trying to find the right word for it, a skillful act of being free from it would be something you will elaborate as you go forward. And I just wanted
exactly. Skill. Yoga is skill actually.
Yeah.
Yoga is also skill. It's not being abrupt with things. It's like looking at things and changing them as you go along. And it's not possible in one day. It takes time. One needs to look at it carefully and handle it. You are right. So when you say vritti, it already has a negative connotation. So all that is negatively connotated as a vritti should be removed. Because good emotions do not agitate the mind. They calm the mind. Devotion, for instance, it calms the mind. You're right. We need to distinguish. Also, the act of actually bringing it about should be skillful. That's why in some of the Buddhist texts they have kept repeating about skillfulness. Skillfulness in emotion, skillfulness in practice, because when anyway.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next.
Namaste, Guruji. So actually, I wanted to ask you, what is the non-ahimsic way of refusing the gift from someone? And also, if we accept the things from our parents and the people on whom we depend, are they? Should we not accept them too?
See, look, I want to tell you that yoga is not a theology. It doesn't have such hard and fast rules like you have to do this, you do not have to do this. It's not like that. It's a thing which we have to look and adapt and use as we go along. So if your parents with great affection, they want to give you, let's say they want to give you a house. If perhaps they are happy when they give you the house, There is no harm in taking it, but you should not become dependent on it and expect again gifts to come from the same source. That is where the problem comes. Understand? And sometimes, many times, gifts are given, there will be some reason behind giving gifts. This usually happens to so-called spiritual teachers or gurus to whom the disciples give gifts. Many people give a gift saying, may all my problems be over, I am leaving this here as a gift. So there is a motivation for that. But people who give out of love and affection, I would say, I agree with Patanjali or not, that is no harm in receiving. But don't get dependent on it so that you're expecting a gift all the time from the person. That's where the problem comes. Not today's civilization is all gifts. Even if you buy something, you get free gifts from the shop. Now, if you say, I don't want this free gift, you take it, that fellow will think this guy is a nut. So, while there is yoga and philosophy and all that, practical wisdom is very much essential. So think about it carefully before you do it. You don't have to do it because I am saying it, okay?
So it means the main problem is expectations.
Expectation. You got it. That is the essence of it.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Because then if the expected doesn't happen, we are agitated. You get it?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Next.
Yeah, I've got a question, Guruji.
Who? Yes.
So actually, I was looking up, the Integral Yoga by Sri Aurobindo Ghosh. And so there he makes a statement that where the past yoga ends, the new integral yoga starts. And the yoga of the past were only of the ascent of the spirit, whereas this yoga is both the ascent and the descent of the, contains both ascent and descent. And so we are doing the Kriya yoga. So with respect to that, where does the integral yoga of Sri Aurobindo stand, and how does that interplay with what we are going to be doing?
Look, while I do agree with many of the things which the great Yogi Aurobindo said, I think yoga by itself is integral. There is no ending of old yoga and beginning of an integral. There is no. This concept seems to be a little bit like conversion business to me. Like I am this, belong to this. If I convert to something else, then I am going into something new. The old yoga itself is integral. There is no non-integral yoga in the world. Why Yogi Aurobindo said this is probably because I also read integral yoga and all that. Probably because yoga, not only so-called integral yoga, but yoga which is integral by itself, it's as you ascend, as there is an ascending movement of the mind, as you ascend, there is a descent from that which is divine. That is already there. The thing is, when that understanding descends, we need to have a mind ascending to meet it, which means the mind has to open up for that. As far as Kriya Yoga goes, there is somewhere in the teachings of Kundalini Yoga, when people do, they're always thinking of taking this in Kundalini up only. Nobody is worried about what comes down. So if you have been initiated into Kriya, you will find that the movement is both up and down. There is an ascent as well as a descent. Some people ask, why are we descending? Why don't we stay there? It's not possible. This is also there in some of the Mahayana texts where one is taught how to shift the consciousness with a lamp or a light or something up, and then allow what is coming from above to descend down, to flow into the system. So it is by nature integral. The divine and the human element have to somehow get together, right? So the human has to ascend and the divine has to descend, otherwise they cannot match.
Right. Understood. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
Sir, my question is that we don't want to hurt anyone, and that is the right path. But sometimes, if we are not willingly and we are not physically hurting anybody, but suppose even in the path to spirituality, let's say one of the means is Maun Vrat or keeping quiet or things like that, and somebody who's very close to us, who's living with us, for whom talking to us was one of the pleasures of life, and we are eventually hurting those people, and that's a very small example I've taken. There could be higher implications. So how do we go around this?
See, that's what, as I was discussing with Professor Bhupinder, we need to do it very skillfully. We cannot be abrupt and kind of... the other thing is, when you have a Maun Vrit and you don't want to talk, you may be doing something which is useful for your spiritual practice. Somebody doesn't understand it. Perhaps their happiness is in talking to you. So we have to find some way to explain this and be skillful about practicing it. You should not say whatever he thinks, it is okay, I'm going to keep on. Now this is being fanatical. Believe me, I'm a married man, so I'm telling you. So we have to find some meeting point for this. I'm talking about this example that you give me. That when young people come to me who want to get married and ask me, do you have any advice? Now it is the most funny thing to ask a monk, I'm going to get married, do you have any advice? Poor man doesn't know what he has never been in this married state. What can he tell you? Unless you feel he's clairvoyant, he knows everything that's happening. I don't believe personally that anybody is omniscient. We may know a little more, a little less, but nobody is omniscient. So, now that you're asking me, it's okay, because I'm a married man. I know what the situation is and how it is and so on and so forth. All are good people, no question. So, what I'm trying to say is, when people come to me and say, young people, we want to get married, till now they are in love and all that, everything is fine. We want to get married. What is your advice? I always tell them, one advice I have to give you, which is, don't think that you are always right. Start with the premise that you could be wrong sometimes. I'm not saying Maun is wrong. Start your life with the understanding that sometimes I may be wrong, sometimes the other person may be right, and sometimes that person may be wrong and I may be right. So if this understanding is there is a give and take. Then you lead a life which is kind of, what shall I say, an understanding way of living. So, even when you want to do some practice which somebody doesn't like, somebody is intimate with you, who is living with you, we should be skillful enough to say, look, okay, you don't want to be in Maun. Okay, this week I'm not going to keep Maun. And keep talking so much that he decides that you need to have Maun. It's a joke, but what I mean to say is, try to make people understand why you want to. There are people who incessantly talk. It's better to be quiet for some time. The other practical advice I can give, instead of 2 days, make it 1 day. Instead of 1 day, make it for 3 hours. And when the other person is comfortable with that, stretch your time. If you're alone, living in the forest like a monk or a nun, then you don't have to bother about all these things. You can do your maun as you want. 6 days, 1 year, nobody is going to ask. But since we are in this world, we need to be skillful even in practicing what we have to practice. Having said all that, I must say that to keep short periods of maun is a wonderful thing. No question. See, I could answer you because I was married.
Thank you, sir.
Next.
Sir, we have one question from Professor Rahul Garg if you have time.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll just be very quick. My question, you talked about Ahimsa, and that looks like a very deep topic. So can you give some references where, different situations, or, it elaborates a little more on that? Because it's just a very short introduction that you gave us.
Sir, first basis of this word Ahimsa, let me put it this way. It is very difficult actually to lead a life following even the first principle called Ahimsa. It's not easy at all, because we actually don't know of a state normally called Ahimsa, because we are most of the time in Himsa. To most of us, Ahimsa is an imaginary state because we have not lived on it. We know only Himsa, less Himsa or more Himsa. We really don't know. The word Ahimsa seems to escape us because we have not lived a life of Ahimsa. We are only in Himsa. Therefore, when I say, when Patanjali uses the word Ahimsa, what he means is not just an act, but the very attitude of not causing injury to others, not causing harm to others. This is what he means, not simply an act. I can practice Ahimsa, but in my mind it is very difficult to develop the actual fact of not wanting to hurt somebody. It's very difficult. So therefore, it is not such a simple statement. It's something which we need to look at very, very carefully. And how do we look at it in a practical way? In our daily actions. The moment we but it is not easy because we'll go mad looking at but sadhaks have to do that. Every act, whatever we do, whatever we say, we have to question the motive. If the motive is harmful to somebody, then it's a violent act, whether we do it or not. If the motive is for the good of others, at least not harmful to others, if not positively good, then we are already beginning to practice Ahimsa. And believe me, since in this world we have lived in the mode of violence, even naturally, the bigger animal eats the smaller animal. We are human beings. We need to transcend that, of course. If we transcend that, then we are going towards what is called divine and not remaining just human. So, this cycle is very difficult to beat because it is already built in our system. Not only the physical cells, but also in our mind. Our neurons have developed after 1 million years of genetic evolution. Some of the genetic characteristics of these animals are there in us. But human being has the capacity to realize this and try to counteract it. Animals don't have. Animals attack only when they are hungry. We attack even when we are not hungry. So this has to be looked at carefully. So one practical way of going about it is, as we live in this world and perform our actions and thoughts, as thoughts occur to us, let's look at the motives and see, is the motive harmful or not harmful? If it is not harmful, even not positively good for somebody, that much, then we are beginning to understand the concept of Ahimsa little by little. We need to look at it, examine every day, every motive. Now, this is a tall order, I understand. But that is more meditation than sitting down for 1 hour with closed eyes. Meditation need not be a sitting stage of meditation. It can be also observing carefully what is happening in our lives, in our minds. This is also meditation. Now that meditation is a 12-hour meditation. If I suppose that you sleep for 12 hours, then it's a 12-hour meditation while you are still awake. Now, those who have practiced it have realized that even a real practitioner of looking at one's own mind, which means looking at the motives of every thought and action, finds that it happens also in a dream. First it has to be practiced in waking state. Then it slowly shifts to the dream state. Well, in deep sleep, we don't know, so there is no concept there. So I think that is a good way of looking at this, and it's a tall order. It's not just not hitting somebody. It's 6 o'clock now. So maybe we should wind up for today. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shrim. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.